right. Well, welcome back, everybody. We are on episode three of our 12-part series called The Road Home, Understanding the Path to and from Homelessness. I got it right that time.
Nailed it, buddy.
I am Brian Hurd with Build by Thrive Mortgage. As always, I've got my good friend Natalie Roberts with Social Strategies.
Good to be here.
And of course, we have the estimable,
Good
that's a good word
diction.
today, right?
It's a rainy day in Austin, Texas.
Melissa Nice-Warner Daly with Homemade Austin, the executive director of Homemade Austins. So today we're going to be talking about aging out of foster care. And to that end, who are we going to be speaking with today?
Yes, I'm so excited about our guest. Today we have Susan McDowell, who's the CEO of LifeWorks. And we also have with us today Mary Bonham Fisher, who's the home-based director of Texas Baptist Children's Home. And rather than reading their bios out, I thought it would be nicer for them to introduce themselves. So Susan, if we can start with you, go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, first, thanks for having us today. This is a real important discussion to have with homelessness, and Mary and I are really excited to meet your audience and contribute to the conversation. So I'm Susan McDowell. I am the CEO of LifeWorks, which is an Austin-based nonprofit organization that is fearlessly dedicated to helping youth and families transition from crisis to safety and success. We are all about finding the pathways to self-sufficiency through housing, through mental health support, and through workforce and education attainment. So that's what we do. We do a lot of work to end youth homelessness and a lot of work with youth who are aging out of foster care.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Yes, welcome. And Mary, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
I'm Mary Bonham Fisher. I'm the program director for the home-based program. And the home-based program at the Texas Baptist Children's Home is one of the programs I work with youth 18 to 24. And we offer an opportunity. We have community living in our cottages. We also have students who are in college and they come home to Texas Baptist Children's Home and live in efficiency apartments. And then we have those that are working or going to local community colleges or technical schools who also live in efficiency apartment. And it is our goal in home base to shift them from just surviving to thriving.
I love that.
Well, and thank you so much for joining us. You know, I've said kind of from the beginning that this is going to be such a learning experience, because my own knowledge of homelessness and really more importantly, the causes of it is rudimentary at best. So really excited to learn from you guys and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, we hear a lot about aging out of foster care. Can y'all talk to us about what exactly that means?
So when a youth reaches the age of 21, well, first of all, the whole point of foster care is to protect vulnerable children who are being neglected, who are being abused, who, for whatever reason, their family can't nurture them. So, and there is a lot of effort to try to mend whatever tragedy, whatever situation is occurring within the family to reconcile and support the family, because data shows, our experience shows that if we can keep families together, everyone is better off, but that's not always possible. So youth sometimes who go into foster care end up in foster placements. The hope is that those placements then can become long-term or permanent, again, because that's what's best for youth, to have one stable, successful home, one stable, successful family that they're grown and nurtured in. But that doesn't always happen. So often at LifeWorks in our emergency shelter for youth, and Mary, I think you all see the same thing at Texas Baptist Children's Home, we see youth who've actually bounced around the foster care system in the region or the state. At our shelter, it is common to see youth who have been in 10, 20, or 30 foster care.
I was just about to ask
Wow.
how often that happens. I mean, I can only imagine. I haven't even moved 10 to 15 times in my life, much
Right.
less,
Yeah.
moved households. That has
As a
to be,
child.
that has to be very chaotic.
And after Mary weighs in, we can talk a little bit more about why that happens, but the result is you reach the age of 18, which is typically the age of emancipation from foster care. If you haven't been placed in a permanent home or adopted. And at that point, if you've spent serious time in foster care with so many placements, so many schools, so much just trauma of transition, then the chances are that educationally speaking, emotionally speaking, you're not ready to succeed on your own. And chances are you've kind of had it with adults at that point, right? So a lot of youth, even though they're offered support at that point, choose not to take advantage of that support, try it on their own. And at that point, they represent the most at-risk population for homelessness because they're not prepared to be on their own, and they lack the support network. So, Mary, is this consistent with what you all see?
Yes, it is. And your study shows it's about 600 youth will run away from foster care. So many of them, before they even age out, because of what you stated, the constant moving and the inconsistencies of parenting styles, not actually being able to attach to a family or a community, many of them will run away. And so by the time they're 18, they have already been living on the street or already been going from couch to couch or person to person. And so it has become a lifestyle of homelessness at that point when they turn 18. And so some of them don't even get the chance to age out. They choose to run out.
And I think too, particularly here in Austin, where we're having so many conversations about chronic homelessness, the number one indicator for chronic homelessness is experience as an adolescent with homelessness. So Mary and I are operating at this really unique space where, youth have a chance still of being seen, kind of recognized for their potential, their dreams. And so both LifeWorks and Texas Baptist Children's Home, we are really trying to wrap a whole lot of support, opportunity, and consistent positive adult relationships around these youth and young adults so they don't go in that direction.
Well, and it's interesting, you brought up all the conversations going on right now, specifically in Austin, but in all the conversations and all the, media stories, whatnot, I don't think I've heard one that's addressed, this particular portion of it, foster care and kids in the system. And you're saying they're the most at risk, the most vulnerable. Why don't we hear more about it?
I think they're not as visible as adults who are experiencing homelessness, and I will tell you why. They're just exceptionally vulnerable. If you're a youth who's run away from foster care or aged out of foster care, protectively speaking, you're going to want to stay out of the public because most youth who do experience homelessness have exquisite vulnerability to being victims of violent crime and to be victims of human trafficking, right? So while you might see a lot of adults on the street in homelessness, if you go, and LifeWorks has a street outreach program in Austin, so we do frequent outreach to places we know that youth are camping and have banded together. So then there becomes kind of a family component to homelessness too. Just people trying to take care of each other and have some sense of family and community on the street. So you don't see that. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I would say all three of us having kids know good and well how I think a familiarity of environment and that continuity of relationship is crucial to especially early childhood development. I could see why you do forge that family, you do create that family by design if you out of necessity.
And if our kids have challenges, hopefully they come to us, but I can't imagine, when you've got somebody that's may have moved, you're saying 14, 15 times, what voice do they have? If they experience, we've talked about trauma, and if they experience trauma, or whatnot, who do they talk to? And that's just, it's scary.
Right. Most importantly, that they trust in a sense of security.
Yes. Good point.
Just like we previously stated from an adult. I'm sure, by that point, you already have a mistrust.
Yes.
On a high level.
Yeah,
so I've heard a lot of stories, and it's made news over the last couple of years in particular, like across the state of Texas, there are an alarming amount of children who are being removed from the home by CPS workers who are having to either sleep on the floor or on cots of CPS workers' offices. And I'm interested to know from both of you, where's the break in the chain? Is it that there are more children being removed from the homes than ever before? Is there just a lack of foster housing, foster homes available? I'd love to hear from y'all on that.
So I can start that, and then because I can talk about Travis County, and here's what we know. We know that there is a tragic shortage of foster placements in Travis County. So if you get removed, as a child from your home, there is a significant chance that you're not going to get placed with a foster home in Travis County. You're going to get placed in one of our, surrounding counties. And why is that a problem? It could be a great home, right? But why is that a problem? It's a problem because the child is removed from not just their family, but their school, their community, probably their extended family. So everything that is familiar is, so you have multiple levels of trauma at that point. And if that first placement doesn't work out, and there are a million reasons that it couldn't work out, then they're moved to another home that's probably even further away, right? So once again, further removed from everything that means home and security to them. And so once you get past 2 placements, that's when you really start seeing behavioral difficulties emerge for very understandable reasons. But because you're far away from your community, you may be far away from treatment options like the doctor that you trusted, that nurse that you trusted, any kind of effective mental health counseling, right? And so then this is when a cycle starts of, behavioral problem. Okay, now we have to move places again. Now we have to move places again. Now we're in a residential treatment center, right? So when you hear about 20, 30 foster care placements, that's how the cycle starts. And at a certain point, you're a kid trying to be a kid, a 15-year-old trying to be a 15-year-old, but you've got this really thick folder of all of these, behavior incidents. So no placement will take you. And that is who is sleeping in offices. Youth who may have mental health needs, who may have behavioral difficulties, and who everybody is just kind of scared or not willing to take a chance on. That's who's sleeping in offices right now.
And with you mentioned the mental health, about 70%, it's between 60 and 70% of youth who age out of foster care are struggling with some type of mental health.
Wow.
But if we go back and we look at Region 7, which is Williamson County, Travis County, and other counties that are in the area, what we understand is the number of babies, infants, 0 to 2, that are in foster care is almost a third. And so what that shows us is before a child is even turned 3, they have already experienced trauma, secondary trauma, abuse, and neglect. And so when you take that child and move them through the system, some will get placed permanently, some will not. So then when you start there, or they come in at 10 and maybe they haven't been in the system, but from the age of 2, they've been experiencing trauma, neglect. So then you're looking at what came first, the chicken or the egg. So was it mental health first, or was it the trauma that caused the mental health? Now you want to put them in a home. People may, like you and me, we become foster parents, but are we really equipped with the trauma that goes along with the children that we receive?
Yeah, you don't know the history. You don't know what all has happened, what they've gone through.
Exactly.
I didn't thought about that.
So then for some, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so then that decreases the number of homes that we're able to put our children in. And so our number of even homes or agencies that are able to handle the needs of the children. So there are many, many reasons for the challenges.
That's really helpful to hear too. One of the questions I had as we were discussing this is why the lack of foster homes available. And now understanding the preparedness of a foster family in understanding all the different, whether it's mental illness, trauma, how the child's coming in. Is there a system in place that currently brings families up to speed in this so that we can expand on the number of homes available in Austin?
I think we are we are not trending well in the state. We have lost a lot of foster families over COVID. We've lost a lot, like 1,000 residential treatment beds to support youth who have profound mental health needs. And we need the funding to support this in the state. We need comprehensive training and support for foster families so they're willing to and equipped to take on the tremendous challenges and heart of youth who have struggled. But we're not there right now. So I think we're going to continue to struggle. But then the direct result is that, and we know this in Travis County, 76% of youth who are experiencing homelessness, youth and young adults, have been in foster care, juvenile justice, or both. So if we are serious about ending homelessness, we have to fully support the systems that maybe were never intended to raise and nurture children, but do. And the cost of human potential, frankly, the cost to the taxpayers is extremely high when we don't.
Yeah, let's talk about the cost of homelessness. I think the cost of on the taxpayer versus when we get people into safe and stable housing.
So Mary's organization and mine both have this prevention program that we do in our respective counties, and the cost of that, and it's a family counseling. It's a community-based programs designed just to help families succeed and be the families that they want to be. Let's keep the systems out of it, right? Because that's best for everybody. Last I looked, the cost of that program per family was about $800. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a few months.
It's really good.
Yeah, wow. I was expecting
right.
a couple more. At least one more zero in there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a current annual cost on what a year of foster care. Do you, Mary?
No,
do you know
I
what
don't.
it is? But let's just guess that it is.
Sure.
It's close to $30,000. It may be more than that. Last time I looked, it was around $30,000. You look, few more years, you've got other systems involved. Cost for juvenile justice is much higher than that, right? So the longer we wait to invest in families and invest in children, the more expensive it is going to be for us to help them.
And not just while they're juveniles. I mean, well into as they grow into adults, and we were talking, I think earlier, one of you was mentioning that a lot of the fire department's time has been in putting out fires at homeless camps, and there's costs associated with that, and all the resources that get spent on not fixing the homeless problem, but fixing certain symptoms and whatnot. So,
and what a better service it is to get people into safe and stable housing and get them, get folks the help
early.
they need rather than just putting out fires left and right. I mean, I think that
it's being proactive instead
Yeah.
of reactive.
Yeah.
I mean, you're thinking strategically, and I love that. I think we have so many different facets of society where I really wish I think we need to, addressing mental health, and a lot of these things early on, as opposed to waiting until they are a problem. So.
And Mary, what kind of support is out there for foster families? I mean, is that really left up to us in the nonprofit community, or, once a child is placed in a home, I mean, where do they go from there?
Once a child is placed in a home, where do they go? Hopefully they're connected and able to stay. But attachment and actually the success rate is very low, as far as when the older they get in the system, the success rate decreases. And so one of the things, this has to do with foster, and it doesn't, but I wanted to kind of share this with Texas Baptist Children's Home. One of our programs is for single moms and dads with their children, because what we have learned over the years, the organization has learned, is that when moms get the tools that they need to be successful, or a single dad gets the tools that he needs to be successful, then the child can stay with that stay in the family. And so that is where success happens. So a single mom or single dad who is struggling or almost homeless or homeless can come into the program and remain 2 years, go back to school or go to technical school or get on their feet. So that is not just for the parent, that is for the child. So that child is in a thriving environment. Environment affects productivity. So our environment affects how well we do in school, how well we do in the community, how well they will achieve in extracurricular activities. And so providing that support to the family will help the child in their development. And so
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I love that, because we were talking about familiarity and and I think if you can help and assist with both the parent and the child, I mean, that keeps, probably the most significant familiarity you could have. So I love that. That's phenomenal. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Yeah, you're spot on.
Because the mom, the family, they all can go through counseling. They all can get the wraparound services and the support. And so that's all I was going to say on that.
Yeah, I think what's important here, and you have probably addressed this in the podcast before, is that solutions to homelessness. So absolutely, first and foremost, housing. There must be stable housing to establish a sense of safety, continuity, so we can then really begin to engage in parenting, building the family, also education and workforce attainment, and mental health recovery from the trauma experience. So, we're two examples of organizations that take this holistic approach to really seeing and addressing what the needs of the whole person and the whole family are, so that family again can succeed. And again, we can just keep the public systems out of it, because it's just better to give families the tools they need to be the families that they want to be.
I agree.
Yeah. I was listening to a Katie Couric interview the other day, and they were talking about, responsible community policing. And one of the questions that came up was, how many times do we fail foster kids before it's too late? So what can we do as a community to show up for foster kids and make sure that they are supported and feel connected and living as fulfilled lives as possible?
One of the things is we as a community have to be intentional. We can't think someone else is responsible. Faith-based organizations can't think the systems can't think nonprofit can't think schools. Whatever area we have influence, we have to be intentional to use that influence and use that opportunity to be an impact to children or the foster care system. And so I think that is number one. A lot of times people don't know, is the question asked, people don't know because people are not talking. And so as we talk about it, like conversations like this, as we get the word out, as we become the voice for the children who cannot speak. But the key is you can't just have a conversation. You have to be intentional about your actions. What steps are we going to take? What steps? So a group could volunteer. They could a fundraiser could happen. There could be donations. There could be mentorship. There are many ways to connect with a child who's currently in the foster care system. But the first step is a made up mind to say, I am going to be part of the solution. I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm going to actually be part of the solution.
So I used to have a neighbor who grew up in foster care, and I think in Alabama, and he had just a very traumatic experience with his parents. And Dad got sent to jail. Mom left the picture, but so he ended up in foster care. It was a small town, and his memory of going into foster care was that people were fighting to be his foster parents, right? His coach wanted to be his foster parent. His teacher wanted to be his foster parent. A neighbor wanted to be a foster parent. What essentially happened was he had a whole community of adults who were fighting to take kind of ownership of his success. That's how every single community should be, and that should be the experience of every single child who comes into foster care. They need to be surrounded by adults who see them, who believe in them, who are willing to invest time and money that they don't necessarily have, because that's what, those of us who are parents do for our kids. So the question is how to do that. And, there are a multiplicity of ways that can start actually with things as simple as paying more attention to the children in your life, the friends of your own children, right? you kind of know when something's not right, or you kind of know when something's going to be struggling. It's having the bravery to step into that space.
It takes a village to raise a child.
It
doesn't
does.
it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
So do you feel there's more, you're talking about, essentially this whole town that was fighting to be this, this person's foster parent. Do you feel like there's more a lack of willingness to do that in a normal community, or is it just lack of education, or probably, I'm sure, to some degree, both?
I think, and Mary, I'm dying to know what you have to say about this, but I have this sense that, we've just distanced ourselves from our neighbors, from a sense of civic responsibility. Our communities don't own our children as we need to own our children as communities. One of the things that the state is trying to solve, but happens too often, is a youth from, let's say, Corpus Christi. Okay, there aren't any placements there, so they get sent to Austin, and that doesn't work out. So then they're in another part of the state. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Youth in Austin, Texas needs to be owned by Austin, Texas. There needs
That
to be
connectivity piece is recurring through every conversation we've had. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the loss of connection. And Mary, what do y'all do at Texas Baptist Children's Home to engage the community in your mission and help them be a part of moving lives forward?
At the Texas Baptist Children's Home, we actually have a volunteer center, and it provides opportunities for individuals, businesses, organizations, churches to become part of the work that we're doing. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. That's how
Love it.
I say it's easier to do oil changes than to rebuild the engine. And so Texas Baptist Children's Home offer opportunities for individuals or groups to come in. We have groups that come in and put flower beds around the campus. They may come in and donate, like for Mother's Day, they may donate gifts for drawings. That still affects, because as we build the self-esteem and of the mom, it's going to affect the children. In our home-based program, we are in need of mentors. That's our youth 18 to 24. So a person could come in and mentor one of our youth, or come along as we're going rock climbing and join, bake a cake, fix a meal. Our moms have programs, group counseling on Monday nights. So there are many ways through our volunteer center, a person, an individual, a group can come in. And of course, being able to give your time, talent, or treasure, whatever it is that you would like to give, there's an opportunity.
And Mary, I'd like to real quick share with you, I think it was 2007, and this will appeal to a large portion of our audience, being in the home building industry. Streetman Homes and Randy Streetman decided to reach out and join forces with the Texas Baptist Children's Home. And in that, what we ended up building was the commissary. But throughout that process, the lives that were touched in the community, like we're talking about, and that synergy that started to happen within our company, being out on site every day, working hand in hand, understanding and meeting some of the women and their children that were there, really was how that connection then thrived and spread out. And I think for the next 3 to 4 years, we all ended up helping on some level. So I love the connectivity, the community, and then how you're saying home builders, anyone come in. There's many, we have a ton of projects that we could work on to help.
And I love that more organizations are creating opportunities for volunteers, because I think such a big part of recovery and stability is integrating into the community and not being so sheltered or so cut off from it because you're going through a lot that you don't get that normalcy. And I think what both your organizations do, I know you both bring in volunteers and you both engage in the community. It's crucial to development.
So, yeah, and if y'all wouldn't mind, let's kind of, unpack it a little bit more specifically. You talked about being mentors and whatnot, and it was mentioned earlier that, we can talk about it, but we need people to take action. So, if each of you wouldn't mind, talk a little bit about what tangible steps, what qualifications, because I think, somebody like me, I want to help, but I don't know directly how to, and I think a lot of people need a little bit of direction on, what does it mean to be a mentor? What does it mean to, help and coach and guide and all that kind of stuff, if you wouldn't mind.
I'll start. Our volunteer needs are a little different. We are working on a community movement in Travis County to make youth homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. And that just means that we build a system of multi-agency partners that are going to house youth and make youth homelessness as rare as possible. So our biggest needs from the community in this movement are, because we are moving youth at the rate now of about 24 a month from literal homelessness to permanent housing.
Wow.
And so we're
Amazing.
recruiting partners. Yeah, we're recruiting partners to put together apartment starter kits. And that's easy. You don't have to learn how to be a counselor. You don't have to go through that. It's literally the stuff that youth need that they can't afford, because we're helping them figure out and providing some financial assistance to get going.
Things like clothing, toiletry, stuff like that, or
Exactly. Toiletry, kitchen supplies, stocking up your bathroom, right? We can help with some furniture, that sort of thing. And so we detail that on LifeWorks website, and there are numbers you can call to kind of find out how to get involved with that, including an event we do every year called the Home Improvement Challenge, which was styled originally after those reality shows in the 2000s. But the idea is that we are taking these four walls of a brand new apartment and making them a real home. So that's one area. Another area, because it is this is challenging work, and it's a lot to ask a professional to jump into. It is a lot to ask volunteers to jump into and understand. So we just launched a program called A Place to Call Home Challenge, where we're reaching out to groups. It can be an office group, it can be a corporate group, it can be a church group, it can be your book club, and we will take you through kind of a multi-module first learning and then engagement session. And I think part of that might be putting together, apartment starter kits or hygiene kits for youth who are living on the street, or some other meaningful intervention for youth who are really experiencing a lot of pain. But it also comes with an educational component, because as we've been talking about, these are huge community problems that we have become disconnected with. And so we really need, and I think both organizations, part of our mission is kind of rebuilding a movement to support children and families. And that comes with some education and a real deep dive in community building on behalf of our kids.
And that all feeds up to your big goal of ending youth homelessness. And what year have y'all set as a target for that? I can't remember.
Well, we were all set for 2020, right? And then,
right. And then 2020.
Yeah, and I will say we ended up housing more youth in 2020 than we imagined. But here's what happened, right?
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, I can't imagine how COVID has impacted your missions, and I'm dying to hear about how you're engaging your volunteers too, Mary, and yeah, from both of you, how COVID has impacted the lives of those you serve and your missions in general.
What I've seen, just in January, we have doubled. Our home-based program was our smallest section, because of Texas Baptist Children's Home, but the need has become one of the greatest. I get social workers from Georgetown ISD, Pflugerville ISD, because of our location in Williamson County. And so they don't have programs. Actually, we partnered with a high school in Georgetown that works with young people who are doing credit recovery. So they're trying to make up the classes. Well, they were working with an organization, Georgetown Project, the Nest, which is an after-school program. And so they reached out to us, and I met with the principal of that school, and he says, I have 100 students, and 13 of them are homeless. And I said to him, that means over 10% of your students are homeless. And he said, well, Georgetown is a great place to live, but not for homeless students. And so with that, we have 3 of their students that recently moved. So these are students who are still in high school, who are trying to finish and get their diploma. They've turned 18. And so some of them, they become homeless for different reasons, foster care. Some are just family said, you're 18, now you figure it out. And so with that, we're seeing the need for what we do in the home-based program, which is the wraparound services, counseling, case management, providing. Actually, a youth could stay from 18 to 24 if that youth decided they wanted to go to college. And so there are, as you say, there are a lot of different needs. Some will come needing clothes, some will come needing basic necessities. Because we're growing so fast, expansion, just trying to, say, okay, well, at this moment, let me take your application. And so, but it's rapid. And so I think with families struggling with COVID, and especially in I want to say suburbs of Travis County, not necessarily being able to get the Travis County services and support. And so a lot of the schools are now reaching out because they say, oh, we have a need. The principal said, we didn't know what we were going to do if we were going to have to build housing ourselves because the need is so great.
I want to go back to something you said earlier that really gets under my skin sometimes, is when you talk about people experiencing homelessness and the response is often, well, Austin's a great place to live. Everyone wants to be here, as if people think like Austin is a great place to be homeless. I think I'm going to move to Austin. And it is this common misconception that that people move here because it's a great place to be homeless. I don't think any place is particularly a great place to be. I think being homeless is...
That rhetoric has ramped up quite a bit over the last few weeks.
Yes.
Especially,
And I think, we talk a lot at one of the conversations we're going to have coming up here is about the lack of affordable housing. And I know that, both of you work in, have transitional housing, which is typically the stay for transitional housing is 18 to 24 months. It's, kind of on a case by case basis. Different organizations will ask for, different measurement of rent, whether it's 20% of your income or whatever it is. Maybe you guys can talk to us about your transitional housing and then what support is available to them after they transition out of that housing into regular independent housing.
So we have a couple of different transitional living programs, and our most kind of scalable program right now is a program called Rapid Rehousing that provides assistance locating an apartment, temporary financial support that can actually last for several years. But the idea is that we are working with youth to identify at any given point, how much can they contribute, right? And that might go up and down for a period of time, much like it does normally with our own, with our own children, right? You chip in a lot when you're going to school, maybe less when they're working, but the idea is over the period of a couple of years, they can take that over as they advance in the workforce. So that's a program that can last 2-3 years, but at the end of it, and this is a difference between transitional housing and rapid rehousing, the lease belongs to the youth. They don't have to make a transition. And one of the big shout outs, Mary, I have for you is the duration of your transitional living. You can stay there for years. And this is why that's important. If you are a youth who has been in, let's just say 15 foster placements, the very act of transitioning is actually traumatic. So when we talk about transitional living and we say, well, you got 6 months, you better kind of pull it together and save money. That's not going to work for youth. All they're thinking about is they're just kind of building themselves, steeling themselves for the stress and trauma of having to make another transition and starting over again. So developing kind of longer term situations like rapid rehousing or long-term transitional living for this age group means it just means a lot, and it's more effective.
One of the things we were working on our strategic planning and the home base, I'm over home base and aftercare. And so aftercare for our moms and aftercare for our young adults. But we were working on our strategic planning. And one of the things that I brought up is I said they're having struggle transitioning into transition. And so what we did was originally all of them were in efficiency apartments, which would have limited the amount of youth we would have been able to take. And so our executive director assigned one of the cottages, actually the last cottage that was built, to home base. And so now we're able to put those that are like the students who are 18, instead of just kind of throwing them into, because a lot of them felt isolated. And so now they're going to be able to live in that community, in that cottage, and then move from that cottage into their efficiency. Because what we realized was a lot, because of the different moves and being out there, that they needed community. And one of the young men said to me the other day, I was driving him to school, and he said, "Miss Mary, I just got to get used to living my life without chaos."
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that is so that we're trying to provide that. And so once they leave our program, then we're able to support them for 2 years in aftercare. And so, and that way we're able to, if a financial need does come, or they can continue counseling, maybe they weren't ready to go to college, but 2 years later, they want to go to a technical school or a trade school. One of our young men is an apprentice. He said, "Well, I listened and you were right. I wasn't," because of what I had told him. Don't feel bad if you don't feel fit to go to college. I often tell the story of Dorothy and the ruby slippers. And I said, Dorothy had those ruby slippers all the time. She just didn't know what she had. But once she realized what she had, she activated it. And so I reminded him that he had greatness. He just needed to know how to activate it. And so one day he came in, and now he's an apprentice, and he's able to save $1,000 a month. So if he's there 2 years and he's able to save, he has a pretty good savings, because our program fee is $100. That's what it costs them. Because more than getting a fee, we want them to be able to save so that they can be self-sufficient once they leave.
Well, I think, changing the way we see ourselves is everything. That's such a big part of what y'all do. Sorry to interrupt. It's that creates that hope. And I imagine that chaos does become like a comfort zone or a weighted blanket if you're so used to that environment. So hats off to y'all.
Right.
Yeah, there's another aspect of this too, which is helping our youth create their own communities beyond kind of the realm of, public systems or social service organizations, right? And I'm sure we may do this in different ways, but we actually activated a project with a group of youth last year to look specifically at the issue of, we had a certain number of youth that we helped place in apartments, and then it didn't work out and they needed to be rehoused. And so we asked our youth, we said, help us study this issue and understand it and develop solutions around it. And what they found was the number one reason that a youth would not be successful in an apartment were due to lease violations for unauthorized visitors. In other words,
Oh, wow.
they're inviting friends over
Sure.
because
Yeah.
they're lonely.
Yes.
They are trying to build a support network.
Yes.
They don't even probably realize it's a lease violation. So we did some education around that, and it was still happening, and that's totally age appropriate, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We all did that as young people, right?
Yeah.
So then the youth actually got together and started designing programming that would help connect all of these youth in different apartments all over the city with each other through arts activities, through public engagement. But the idea was the youth are creating community supports with each other, not with a social service organization, not.
Well, and they're taking it upon themselves to do that. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That they're the ones that are creating these things and helping put it together. So
And those bonds are going to last.
Yeah.
forever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as we're running out of time here, we're always short on time and never short on what to talk about. But in closing, I would ask each one of you, and of course, if you guys have questions as well, but what's the one thing that you would like our audience to know? What's the most important thing you think they should know?
About youth homelessness?
Whatever pertains directly to you. And I realize that's a very open-ended question, but what do you want? How do you want to educate people?
So when you ask a 20-year-old who's experiencing homelessness, when did you first become homeless? And, maybe you're expecting to hear something like losing the house, getting kicked out, what have you. When you actually ask a youth when the first time they experienced homelessness, the answer is more typically something along the lines of, oh, when I was 8 years old and they took me from my family. So understanding that youth homelessness is not necessarily, it's not about the loss of a physical structure typically, but it is about the loss of family and connection. And just to get in that place of understanding and compassion is what I'd like to leave listeners with.
Do you feel that's a comfortable question for us to ask? Because again, I'm learning, and I think for me, that's not an easy question to ask. And do you feel like that's an easy, an appropriate question?
I don't know that you should ask it, but I think we should all live in that place of curiosity. If homelessness is at its core about loss of mental health, loss of family, loss of physical health, every story of homelessness is about a story of loss. So approaching individuals, approaching public policy issues from the perspective of what loss happened here. And really, how would I be dealing with that loss?
Yeah.
I didn't have the
That's a good
network
point.
around me.
Empathy.
Empathy. That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Curiosity. I think it's where we all need to start.
Great. Mary, how about you? What should everybody know?
Someone said it, and I often say, this is village work. It does take a village. And so once we recognize that whatever we have been given, how can I utilize what I have in my hand in order to contribute to the village? What is my talent? Is it my time? Is it my treasure? How can I be part of part of the solution? How can I impact the life of a child, a teen, a young adult? And once we come up with that answer, then as I stated before, then we become intentional in doing our part. And I believe as we see, I have something. That is why I work in the field of human services, is because I have been given something to impact the lives of people, to impact the lives of young people. Well, someone that may not be your career field, but you have a talent, you have some time, or you have a treasure. And so how will you assist us in building the village, restoring the village? And so that is what I would say to anyone who is listening and watching to us on today. Let's come together as a village and let's build children and young adults and families.
Well, and I love that approach because you're basically saying, we all have gifts. We've all been given gifts. How do we utilize those to help? Instead of waiting for somebody else to tell us, here's exactly what you need to do, which I do myself sometimes. But to be introspective enough to say, okay, what are my strengths and what can I bring to the community? I think is a really good approach and something that, again, I need to learn to do a better job of.
Stay curious, be intentional, and activate your gifts.
Activate your gifts.
We're on it, y'all.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and educating us and being a part of this. And
thank you for the work that you're doing for the children
Yes.
and the community. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it's a wrap. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you again next week.